All right, everyone. Hello, my name is Emily, and today you guys are my middle school class. And fun fact, I've never actually taught in a formal setting before. I do most of my teaching in the museum, just kind of on the fly, outside. So this is a bit different, and we're going to see how this goes. But today we are learning about oxen. And what exactly are they? Does anyone have any ideas on what an ox is? No? All right, that's okay. We're going to learn. But first, we're going to look over our learning objectives. So at the end of this lesson, students, you guys, will be able to correctly define what an ox is, identify the uses for oxen, and understand how oxen can be helpful to the environment. So what is an ox? Oxen are castrated bulls, which are steers, that are used as draft animals. And steers are actually not considered oxen until they go through 4 years of training. It's kind of like getting a college degree. So as you can see in that upper picture, we have a yoke. So what you're doing when you start training your team is you take them pretty much from birth, halter train them, get them used to people and really enjoying people. And then at a couple months of age, you put that yoke on them, which fits around, that bow fits around their neck. And then you get them used to being yoked up together and learning commands, whoa, which is stop, haw, which is left, G, which is right, and then back up, obviously, is to back up. So you want to teach them the things like that early on, so when they're older, they already have a rock solid foundation. So what you can see down in this lower picture is Tom and Sid, who are about 3.5 years old, and you can see they're pulling a cart behind them, but they're not fully grown. And another thing about oxen, it's pretty important that they have horns because they actually use their horns to brace the yoke against it. Without those horns, that yoke would just slip right off. So what are oxen used for? A lot of people think that oxen are just used for farm work, but they can actually be used for a variety of things. So first off, as you can see in this lower picture with these two oxen, they're pulling a sled of logs. So oxen can be used for logging, pulling logs out of the woods, and they can be really useful if you have an area that is kind of secluded, away from a road, and you really can't get a truck in there. You can take your oxen because they're a little bit smaller than a truck, and you'll be able to weave through the trees to get what you need to grab, and safely bring it out of the trees and back onto the road or wherever you are bringing them to. So that's pretty cool, and they actually tear up the ground a lot less than a truck would, so they're actually a little bit better for the environment in that sense. You can actually power machinery with them too. If you have something such as a cider mill that is driven by gears and things like that, you can have your oxen pull kind of your starting gear or your crank, and they can pull that and run the machine. So that can be really helpful. They can also do general farm work. They can plow, they can pull carts, and they can transport goods. So overall, there's a lot of different uses for them, especially other than just the plowing the fields, which is what many people think of when they think of oxen. But how exactly do oxen help the planet? Well, using oxen can help reduce the need for machinery that uses fossil fuels. If you have your oxen that are pulling something like a cart, you don't need a tractor. And you don't need a truck to kind of use in place of your oxen. And they also produce manure like every cow, and that helps the soil when you spread it on there. And while plowing, they can tear up the ground a lot less than modern machinery, so that's much better for your soil in your fields than using modern technology such as a tractor. And as you can see in this picture, we have Dawn and Red pulling a cart, and we were actually going to get some manure to spread on our fields. So here you can see some pictures of oxen around the world. So we have a team in India, Africa, and the Caribbean. And you see they all look a little bit different. And that's because there's no breed of oxen. So they kind of are a mix of different breeds, and they can all look a little bit different. So this team in India is dragging a plow. This team in Africa is pulling a cart. And this team in the Caribbean is pulling a cart. And you can see the team in India, Africa, and the Caribbean all have slightly different versions of yokes. You can see the Caribbean is especially cool because they have what are called head yokes. So these just go right around the horns instead of the neck. So it's just a slightly different style of yoke than you might be used to be seeing with the oxen having it just around their neck. And so this is just kind of a really good example of the variety of oxen you might see that are a little less common here in America and here in Massachusetts. And so you might be saying, Miss Emily, if oxen can do all this stuff, why can't we just use horses? Well, there's a couple different reasons for that. First of all, horses can be quite difficult to train. They require a lot more food than an ox, especially if you're working them hard. You have to give them a lot more food. But they are faster than oxen, which is a pretty big advantage because that can be allowed them to be used for things like riding and things like that. Oxen are much slower than horses, which is why they're so good at transporting things. Even though it takes a long time, let's say you have something expensive in the back of your ox cart, it's probably not going to break. They are also stronger than horses, and they get sick less frequently than a horse. They're a lot easier to train, and they're cheaper to buy. Really, oxen are just a byproduct of the dairy industry. You know, if you have a dairy farm, you're probably having half female calves born and half male calves born. Your female calves are going to grow up into milk cows, and you're going to use them for milking, which is where they're most valuable. But your bull calves, you're probably just going to use for meat. So if you can train them for 4 years and get about 10 years of work out of them, that's very useful. And for basically free. And if you don't have cows of your own and you're not breeding your own cows and you don't have access to male calves, getting them is quite easy because they are so cheap, because there's no other use for them other than meat. So that's kind of the difference between horses and oxen. And all the drivers of horses and oxen that I have talked to say they would never train the other species of animal. It seems like people either do horses or oxen, which is kind of cool. All right, so now I got a little game for you guys, just to kind of summarize what we've learned, and I like to call this ox or no ox. So in the next pictures, we are going to use our context clues, and we are going to figure out if these oxen are oxen or if they're just cows. So remember, to be an ox, you need to be a male, you need to be over 4 years of age, and you have to have 4 years of training. All right, guys, are we ready? Let's do this. So this is Tom. He's 9 years old, and he's a steer. And he's also been trained for 4 years. Is Tom an ox? Tom is an ox. Great job, you guys. And this is Red and Dawn. They're 4.5 years old. Both of them are steers, and they've been trained for 4 years. Are they oxen? They are, correct. Good job, guys. All right. This team looks a little bit younger. This is Mary and Penny. They are 10-month-old heifers, so they're girls, and they've been trained for 5 months. Are they oxen? No, they're not. Can anyone tell me why? Correct, because they're girls and they haven't been in training long enough. And they're too young. All right, this is Blue. He's 3.5 years old, and he's been trained for 3 years. Is Blue an ox? No. Can anyone tell me why? Because he's not old enough, correct. All right, this is Mabel. She's a 5.5-year-old cow, so she's a girl, and she's had no training. Is she an ox? No. Can anyone tell me why? Because she's a girl with no training. Excellent. Thank you for playing that game with me, guys. So today, to summarize, we learned about what oxen are, how to identify an ox, how they help the environment, and why they are different than horses. And I did want to include this picture because this is actually me with Mary and Penny. I've been training them for about 5 months now, and although they won't be oxen, they will be working heifers, which means they'll still be able to do all the work that an ox does. So I think they're pretty cool. All right, does anyone have any questions? No? All right.